Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast, the silly and serious shenanigans of two queer relationship coaches. I am your host, Elizabeth Cunningham.
And I'm your host, Lee Greeps.
On this podcast, we talk about how to live your best queer life with fulfilling, healthy relationships and anything else that makes your little queer heart happy. Because living your life outside of the heteronormative scripts is totally possible for you.
Each episode, we explore all things queer love from our professional perspective as relationship coaches, our own personal experiences, and as partners.
If you love our show, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships. You can also check out our website, www.queerloverelationships.com.
Thanks for following us and enjoy this episode.
Equilibrium between taking care of ourselves, being mindful of our nervous system, and getting uncomfortable and being courageous and doing things that progress us forward. Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast. Oh man.
You heard it.
You heard it here. You heard it here, folks.
Right.
How's everybody doing? How we doing? How we feeling? Check in. Take a few deep breaths. Close your eyes. Put your hand on
if
your
you're driving
Not if you're driving. Dude, don't do that. Don't do that.
or operating heavy machinery.
Also, if you're operating heavy machinery other than a car, I really want to know. I really want you to message us and be like, I drive this. I operate this type of machine. I fly a plane. I'm like, oh my God, I want to know if you're listening to this podcast and flying a plane. That's sick.
That is irresponsible. No.
Well, they have less air traffic controllers to listen to, so maybe they'll listen to this
There
podcast
you
instead.
go. Not a wise choice. Thank you for your support and also
And
not
also,
a wise choice.
Also, speaking of less air traffic controllers, shit's crazy right now. And it's difficult to be with all of the craziness currently.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
What are we going to talk about today?
If if you're having trouble navigating the world or something like that. What was it?
Well, just like if you're having trouble navigating things right now, because I feel like a lot of the conversations that we've been having, I've been having,
I feel like
people have
everyone's
been
probably
having.
like, why do you keep happening to me?
Because I always do it. I don't know.
No, I think it's just funny. No, I mean like they're like, oh my God, please fire that one from that show.
I think it's funny.
I think it's great, but I just wonder how many people are like, okay, obviously.
I always get curious what you're gonna say.
I also get curious. That's on a daily basis.
We talk about it beforehand, and then it's like, what are we talking about?
Because we talk about it usually like this broad, and I'm like, how did we summarize that? Anywho,
here we are.
Navigating things.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's been the large topic of conversation is what can we do? Like people are trying to find their bearings. It seems like people are a little bit less overwhelmed than they were in January, but it's still overwhelming.
Like, is it less overwhelmed or just used to that?
Or more used to it now, more used to the overwhelm, which I don't like either. But yeah, I hear you. But I was talking to, and like I said, I've been having this conversation with myself. I've been having this conversation with others, and I think one of the main key points is to start where you're at, because you also don't want to, and I'll talk about what I mean by that in a second. But what you don't want to do is like add to the overwhelm yourself by trying to overwhelm yourself with things that you could do, right? Um, uh, but I think the other tendency is to be like, well, there's not a lot that I can do about it, and so then you don't do anything, right? Which, everyone can make up their own mind about how they want to deal with this, but if you do want to do something, then and you feel resigned, then this is also a good episode to listen to as well. So if you feel overwhelmed, or if you feel resigned or confused or lost, like this is a good episode to listen to. And so I guess what I mean by start with where you're at, is, and I'm gonna use a story analogy to explain this, is that I've been depressed multiple times in my life, but there's two really major times in my life where I've been depressed to the point where it's like I'm, if I'm not working, then I'm in my bed or I'm on the couch, or like I feel like completely incapacitated, right? And the first time that it happened, I was 23, and what I learned from that I then employed now or recently in the past couple years has been that I know if I give myself a bedtime, that eventually that bedtime will lead to me waking up at a reasonable time in the morning, so that I can start doing things in the morning, like having a morning, some sort of morning routine. And that doesn't have to be like super structured, but just like doing something for myself in the morning. Like when I was 23, it went from like, I would my words to myself were, you just need to move yourself from the couch to the bed at 11 p.m. That's it. You just need to move yourself from the couch to the bed at 11 p.m. And also in doing that, I had a nighttime routine. So it was just like I also made sure that I brushed my teeth and washed my face before I got into bed as well. And then when I woke up, I started waking up at the same time every day, since I was going to sleep at the same time every day. And then I started eating breakfast again, which was really great. And then with my breakfast, I started, reading the news every day. I don't know if I would recommend that right now, to read the news every day at the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning.
I would never recommend that.
Not a huge recommendation, but that's what I was doing. But that was kind of like my morning
Yeah,
routine, right? And then after a couple of months of that, all of a sudden I was like, you know what else I'm gonna do? I want to move my body more. I am gonna start running again. And then a couple months after that, I was like, I actually want this to be even more structured. I'm going to join a gym. And, so on and so forth. And just like things kept like snowballing in my life to the point where I was actually living a life that like I was wanting to live, instead of just like being depressed on the couch. Right. And so this past time when that happened, I knew that if I gave myself just one thing, like my bedtime, then eventually that would lead to the progress that I wanted to make. Right. And that's exactly what happened. Like I gave myself a bedtime. After several months, I had a clearer morning routine. After a couple more months, I started working out again, et cetera, et cetera. Like, and so having these, and you can do this with, and that was just for my own like, mental and physical health. But you can do this you can use this principle in every single area of your life, right? Like in my business, I have like the minimum acceptable of what can get done every week. So like also during this past time, because the first time I wasn't running a business, but this past time I was, or I am. And so I was like, what are the minimum acceptable things that I need to do every single week in order to keep my business going? How can I pare it all the way down to the minimum, but things are still moving forward, right? And like really making things very simple for myself, for the team, for, like continuing to modify as I go, sort of thing. And so with what is going on in the world, in our country, with however you may be feeling about that, really acknowledging where you're at with it, and then what is one action that you can do now to just start making like a regular or routine action for yourself. And obviously, like only you can say where you're at currently, right? So maybe that is like, maybe you have been really depressed. So maybe your action is something like, I'm going to have a normal bedtime so that I, start having a normal sleeping schedule because I know that that's going to help my mental health. Like maybe that's where you're at right now and there's no shame in that, right? Or maybe where you're at is the first action that I'm going to take is I'm going to start talking to my family about how I feel. And maybe that's the family that agrees with you. Maybe it's not, if you have family that is very I'll just say it. If you have MAGA family, then maybe you don't talk to them right now. Maybe you just talk to the family that you currently feel safe with, right? And then like knowing that the next step will be there, right? Like not needing to figure everything out right now, right? Not needing to have the answer right now. Also recognizing that inside of all of this that's going on, like you can show up however you want to. Like you can, like if you want to be the person who leads the protests, you can do that. If you want to just be the person who shows up at the protest, if you want to be the person who volunteers in some other way, if you want to be the person that talks on social media, if you want to be the person who just donates to, ACLU every single month, like, or whatever your chosen, organization is, right? Like if you want to be the person who writes, who uses the 5 calls app and it's just like, nope, that is my action. My action every day is to do the 5, or once a week is to use the 5 calls app or whatever. Like there's a lot of different actions that you could be taking, or maybe you want to get more involved in like local government, which is what I would suggest from my own political science background. My suggestion is to start being more aware of what's going on in your local government, like your town, your city, your state, because that's where you have more uh, that for a lot of different reasons. Number one, that's where your voice gets heard more. That's where your vote counts more. And it's also people who are in federal government often start in city and state governments. And so if you're electing people right now who you like and trust and are doing a good job, the likelihood that that is going to have long-term effects is a lot higher, right? Also showing up in your local community is a way to be seen by your community, because the more that people see and hear people like you speak and share their story, the more likely they are to have empathy and understanding towards people like you. And this is the Queer Love podcast, so I'm speaking specifically to queer people when I say that. And so like having people in your community who see you and who like you and who are able to who you're able to interact with on a human level is really powerful, right? And again, like Zoom just gave a thumbs up. My hand movements always make the Zoom things pop up. But and again, like like you might be at I need to go to bed at 11 p.m. every single night. You might not be at I'm going to show up to my, city council meetings. And that's totally okay. There's not a way or a place that you need to be at right now. But my point is that wherever you are at, beginning to just take that one action without having to have it all figured out, and recognizing that in starting to take that one action, number one, your anxiety is going to get a little bit lower because you're actually going to be doing something towards what you want to be doing. And number two, that eventually that will lead to the next thing, right? Eventually, like your capacity as you take on this new task, eventually your capacity, that will be normal for you. And so then your capacity will grow, and then you'll move on to the next thing. And then you'll start to take that on. And then your capacity will grow. Like I said, mine was going to bed at the same time every single night, which turned into a morning routine, which turned into taking better care of myself, which then actually eventually turned into me getting a better job. Like if I really followed like that train and like shared that whole story, like it really turned into like me turning my life around. But it really did just start with like, okay, I'm gonna move my body from the couch to the bed at 11 p.m. That's my commitment right now. So yeah, that's what I've been talking about to myself. I've been reminding myself of that. And that's also what I've been um talking about with clients and also friends and family who feel similarly to me in wanting to be more vocal or make a difference or do something about what's going on right now. Yeah. Yeah. What say you?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've been just thinking about it in the context of, nervous system work, because I mean, that's what it's happening. Like in like the different states that you just said, like where you get overwhelmed and like anxious and stuff. It's like, yeah, you're in the sympathetic state. And so it's like, that's where you're, into that more mobilized state where like, I gotta do something, but what do I do? I don't know. I'm getting so overwhelmed, but there's so much to do.
And I don't even know what to do.
Yeah,
And
like
it
so
will
like
even make a difference.
right, like so like that's in that state, and then, for those feeling more of like I think you use the word resigned or depressed, more in that just kind of dorsal state where you're just like immobilized, where it's really hard to do anything. And so, it's really like, like you said, it's the awareness, number one, to like meet yourself, and when I say meet yourself, meet your body where it's at. And so it's like, yeah, am I feeling in that more sluggish kind of state, right? Or maybe you are leaning more into like in the depressed state where it's just hard to do anything at all. Like even like your thoughts are just like, I don't know, like that versus in that more anxious state, right? Where you're like, ugh. And so just like noticing where your body is at and then honoring where your body is at so that you can then move from that space because, you think about it in the context of, what's going on collectively, that's obviously impacting us in our nervous system, especially as queer folks, because it is, it's activating that survival mode, right? And so that's where we start to get into these more dysregulated states, right? As opposed to being in that more safe, grounded, parasympathetic kind of experience. So like, okay, so in that collective sense, and then, you also have to think about what's going on in your interpersonal life, right? So maybe you have a lot of family that is stressing you out because, of what they went with. Or, even just in your relationship, maybe you're just having challenges in your relationship, like your partnership, for whatever reasons, but this is just also, it's compounding into that for you because if you're just not feeling safe in any area of your life or in majority of the areas of your life, maybe work is terrible, or you have conflicts at work. So looking at all these different pockets of life that are impacting you on and your nervous system and your body. And so it can feel very just where do I go? And so yeah, meeting with your body where you're at. And to E's point around, yeah, finding some like one thing, right? Especially if you're in any of those like the dysregulated states, it's like, okay, what's one thing to like turn towards more of the safety and regulated space? Like, because we also, when we're in those states of, survival, right, where you're in that more anxious state or you're more depressed state and like that frozen kind of state, we want to, it seems counterintuitive, but our nervous system is trying to keep us in that state because we're perceiving threat and danger. So it's like, why would I be safe around a lion trying to attack me? Like that's what it's thinking is happening. And so it's like, you really have to bring that awareness and intention to shift away from keep going down the spiral train and then shifting into, okay, where can I actually put my resources, like at your actual, like your energy, your intention, your attention, all of that, like so all those resources that you have, how can I shift that instead of keep hammering away down the anxiety train, down the depression train, where then you just collapse because you've used all your resources in that way. It's like, where can I catch myself in this and what do I need? And that also comes back into, even what we talked about last episode around, friends or community or people that feel safe. Because you can also get that co-regulation from one another as well. Obviously, if you're just both anxious and on fire, that's not going to be helpful. But being able to have another resource to work with around this too. Like, if you have say a therapist or a coach or a mentor or someone like who is in a more grounded state, it helps because then you are actually, that's like the other part of your nervous system, right? And vice versa. And so you're able to regulate in that way. And so, you can think about that too, as well, like who in your life is a safe grounding experience for you and tapping into that more as well. And so yeah, just really what's the thing that's going to help in that way, especially if in the more depressed kind of state, you want to get some mobilization going. You're not moving, right? So it's like, okay, we need to moving from the bed or moving from the couch to the bed, or like my movement is, or the movement I am taking is calling my best friend every day, whatever that is. Right. And, in that more anxious state of like, okay, where are we at? We need to hone in on something and not everything all at once. And, getting back into your body where you're not just like going, anxious, but not making any movement in that way. Like you're going, but there's not like oh yeah, like that feels good. That helped. It's just like you're just spinning the wheels until you then deplete yourself, right? And so it's where can you put that energy towards something that is more channeled in that way? And then being able in those moments, I think, I mean, because I think the thing that I've been seeing with clients a lot, that are experiencing this, especially coming down from the collective level with all the federal government shenanigans, is coming back into what do you already know to be safe in your life, right? And it can be very simple. It could be, what has me feel safe is that I have a bed, right? I have a home space, whether that's a studio apartment or like a 5-bedroom house, whatever it is, like I have a home space that is safe for me. And to let yourself actually really feel that, experience it, right? And maybe it's even just what feels safe. Maybe there's like, it's hard to connect with people right now. So it's like, being outside, being with a tree, or if you have a pet, and just like really experiencing that, like letting yourself like intentionally experience that, because that also helps to get you into the space of it's not all dangerous, right? Because that's what we want to turn down so that you can actually be able to turn up the regulated experience that actually allows you to then take more actions like you were talking about, where it's like, yeah, right now I cannot go to city council meetings, absolutely not. But what I can do is make sure I eat 3 meals a day, right? It's just things like that. And I think that's that's been something that I've been talking with clients about too, is just the I think we tend to undervalue it a lot because we feel like we're not doing anything, especially in this overproductive society of just taking care of the basic things for yourself, is the sleep and food and water and some movement. Get outside for just 10 minutes, please. But just things like that, or turning your turning your screens off earlier, not going on social media as much, or just checking the news once a week or once a day, but that's it, right? Like things of that is going to tend to your overall well-being, even if it seems super small. Like that's a very radical act nowadays, especially as queer folks, because it's like there's so, like, if we're just so thrown, into that danger and threat survival mode, then we're not actually able to connect with one another. We're not even connecting with ourselves. And so then it just disorganizes us even more, and then just causes for more scattering and for more chaos and for more dysregulation, right? So it's really getting into that more grounded state, which comes through like very simple actions. And so, I think that's like, that has been a theme for sure, is like the power of simplicity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, don't underestimate the power of simplicity. Do a freaking breathing practice for 1 minute a day, just that intentional practice. It's like, oh, I'm only doing it for 1 minute. I'm like, yeah, you're doing it for 1 minute. That is fantastic, because again, it's going to add into these larger actions, like larger capacity or threshold for taking different actions, right?
Yeah, it's the compound effect. It's not like this isn't 1 + 1 = 2. It's like this is more exponential than that.
Yeah.
You
You need to, because you have to think about it as like this, maybe this one action of doing the breathing practice, right? This one action is actually expanding your capacity so that you can then go into these more, again, the city council meeting, we're just gonna go with that example. That and this state may seem like that is going to just fry me, like that's gonna make it worse actually, right? So it's like we need to expand our capacity to hold that, which means like clearing out some of the space, and then we can go, okay, now I can be in a, maybe a larger group setting, or talk about, things that are very activating. So just yeah, that's why it's like not 1 + 1 = 2. It's like we're doing not math things here.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of some of the stuff that I've been reading about, like queer history and like around, especially around like Stonewall and stuff like that, where what is it? It's like, we danced all night so we could wake up and fight the next day, right? And it is that idea of, and our last episode was about friends and community, and so it's also like, yeah, like not doing this alone either, and you're not alone, right? Like you're not alone, like we're not alone, and we really can, and we really need to lean on each other. And whether, again, if you listen to the last episode, you can hear me and Lee's like different definitions and perspectives on like what community is. But whatever community is and whatever friendship is that has you, have a fuller cup, then lean into that, lean into those resources, as well as, your self-care practices. And, I'm also reminded of a quote. I really like the movie Cloud Atlas. I know that there's been
I knew that for whatever reason. I was like, I feel like you're going to talk about Cloud Atlas.
I know that there's a lot of critiques about that movie, but like one of the things that
This is not a movie review.
This is not a movie review. This is not a movie review. But the reason why I like that movie, and I do understand some of the critiques, and they are very valid. One of the reasons why I like that movie is because one of the themes comes down to this quote, which is sometimes our survival demands our courage. And I think when we talk about like taking care of yourself, it is this equilibrium between taking care of ourselves, being mindful of our nervous system, and getting uncomfortable and being courageous and doing things that progress us forward, you know? And again, you don't have to be the person with the megaphone to be courageous, like there's so many different ways, like stepping out of your comfort zone or being courageous looks different to every single person.
Yeah.
So I don't say that to put pressure on um or to create unrealistic expectations. And also, we're living in some trying times. Like there's not always going to be, we are very privileged to be able to consider our nervous system right now. And during trying times, there's not always the privilege of considering your nervous system every single move that you make. Sometimes we will be faced with things that demand our courage, regardless of what our nervous system is doing. Right. And so in the times where you can consider your nervous system, please do. And in the times when you can't, I offer my love and my solidarity in your courage.
Mm.
And that's how I feel.
There you go.
But that's also, it's what I think about for myself too, just like take care of myself where I can. And also I feel like being courageous for me is taking care of myself too.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, it's different. Like, I think that word of courage is like, people are like, I'm standing up with my sword in battle. Like, but it is the I mean, yeah, stepping into like an uncomfortable situation or unfamiliar or uncertain situation, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that is the importance of being able to, because I think that's also something with like nervous system where people think, I just have to be at a grounded stage always. And I'm like, no, what you need is to be able to understand how to get more into a regulated state or to like turn down the volume of the like threat, like the perceived threat and what's actually danger and what's not, right? And so you get into that and you're like, oh, okay, great. Now I can take more courageous or risky actions because I am in a more, and then I get into that space and I'm like, now I'm freaking out again. Okay, now I just, all right, where is my safety around me,
Mhm.
right? So it's more of just being able to move through those different states, because I think that's where people will contend to like be like, well, if I'm not there, I'm like, look, you can be in different states here and be swimming in different ways and you have different capacities in those things, right? So it's just being more of what is safe around you, what is safe inside you, like how can you bring that safety into you,
Yeah.
so that you can then get uncomfortable, because getting uncomfortable is how you grow in that
Mhm.
way, right? Of like, you can't know something, in the way of like the familiarity versus unfamiliarity, right? So but we need to be in that space where we can kind of keep moving back and forth, moving back and forth, moving back and forth. Because yeah, I mean, if you're frozen on the floor, yeah, you're not gonna be able to do much.
Well,
And
yeah,
the courage is getting up.
the courage is getting out.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
like just that little bit. So I think
Right.
just understanding like courage doesn't mean you're standing there with a sword.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Doesn't mean, yeah, doesn't mean you're standing there with the sword, doesn't mean that you're the leader of the protest, doesn't mean that you're speaking up at your city council meeting or whatever. For some people, that's what it means. But yeah, that's why it looks different for everyone. For some people, it looks like sharing, your opinion with a family member. For some people, it's, yeah, just getting up off of the floor.
Some people it's that breathing
For
exercise.
some people, it's the breathing exercise, For some people, it is like being more intentional about community. Like that's a really courageous act,
Mhm.
Like it's different. It's different for everyone. Like you're the only one who knows and can say where your growth edge is.
Mm.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, anything else that you want to say?
Yeah, keep it simple.
Keep it simple. All right. I love you. We love you.
Love you, bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Queer Love Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Drop us a line on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships, or email us at queerloverelationships@gmail.com. If you are interested in working with us, follow the Linktree link in the show notes. See if our offers resonate with you. And if they do, sign up with us or book a discovery session. We are so grateful that you're here, listening, learning, and growing with us. Until next time, keep loving.